consent. Commit you that your etiquette's a speech impediment. I'm in my element and feel benevolent, even when I'm viewed as the elephant in every residence I'm stepping in. But hell, I ain't tripping. Hey man, say man, flow nuts, macadamia. I'm from the city of purple, spitting vibranium. Get it in your cranium. Can't nobody assemble him, and if I ever go down, it'll be swinging like pendulums.
Let me just be honest, like a month ago, my dad told me for the very first time ever in his life that he loved me. And watch this. It threw him off so much when he said it that he had to say it and then just hang up the phone. Like he said it quick, like I was like, all right, Dad, I promise you, peace. He said, okay, love you, bye. I said, hold on.
We come from where most don't break free. We had to learn why cage birds sing, but we fly, even though they poison the sky. We don't cry. We gon' take our piece of the pie.
So I'ma need my bread hot, fresh and ready. For those who tried to keep me on ice like a Yeti. The West Beat, where they press me to a diamond. That's why I throw it up like the Heimlich. I'm just maneuvering on the serpent's head. So I tread on the skull of my enemies. And I'm quadrupling anything that I touch. If it's milk and honey, dummy, I'm the honeybee buzzing. You can see the pure pollination. Need G's like Masons in the haven. For these beats, I freak on the daily. I lose sleep putting feet to the pavement and grinding. Like a power 2 or X, refining. Everything I do on wax. My time is nothing, I refuse to lack. The shine which only a diamond can match. Bling bling.
But how I grew up is my dad, and because his dad did the same thing to him, like the emotional boy wasn't really there with them, but they felt like if I provide for you, like I feed you, you should know I love you. I ain't gotta say it. I said, all right, Dad, I just wanted to say I love you too.
We come from where most don't break free. We had to learn why cage birds sing, but we fly, even though they poison the sky. We don't cry, we gon' take our piece of the pie.
Well, good evening. This is Susan L. Taylor, and I am the founder of the National Cares Mentoring Movement. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be with you this evening. There's no place else that I would rather be in the world. The National Cares Mentoring Movement is really devoted to disrupting Black poverty, Black and brown poverty. And we do that through wellness mentoring circles and helping young people to give voice to their challenges. And what we hear all the time, and you'll hear in a little bit later from our Chief Programs and Partnerships Officer, Stephen Powell, who really leads our work in communities around the country. We're in 58 US cities, and we do this work where harms live. It is shameful that so many young people are struggling at this moment that finally is being given voice to because of the pandemic. But for the pandemic, we probably wouldn't even be focused on the emotional wellness. This is what it's taken. This is what it's taken for the nation to really pay attention to what our young people have been screaming for. And so if we look at the spike in suicide rates among especially African-American youngsters, the numbers are stunning. What is it, 47% increase among our boys, a 59% increase among our girls. Sadness. In our work, young people say to us, you really want to know how we feel? Nobody ever asks us how we feel. And I'll tell you what we learned from young people. If you stop criticizing us, we'll tell you the truth. And so this gathering tonight is so very important because we have to create a space for young people to be who they are, to be able to express what they're feeling. We have to look in your eyes and say that we see you, we love you, and we're going to protect you. Because, especially for middle schoolers, at that young age, you don't have the emotional maturity to really understand how to handle sadness. The truth is that it too shall pass. There's no feeling that is permanent. Joy is not permanent, and neither is sadness. Life brings us both. And after, I think I've learned more in my challenging moments than I have in my joyful ones. So I am just welcoming everybody this evening. I am so honored to be a part of it, and I'm going to be tuning my ears and listening in and learning so that we can take what is learned here back into our communities. And I invite you all to please join us. Please join us, the National Cares Mentoring Movement, on the 23rd of February for our gala. Just go onto our website, caresmentoring.org. You can register, you'll learn all about it. Let's move it forward. Let's surround our young people with the love that they deserve and need from all of us.
Yes, 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 indeed. Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. It's such an honor to have you open up this evening. Your work in uplifting and empowering children and really all people is something that we are extremely grateful for. And thank you to National Cares Mentoring Movement for being such a great partner on this initiative. What a remarkable way to open up our program this evening. I am Nicholas Wiggins. Good evening, everyone, and I am Managing Director of Values Partnerships. We are the country's largest Black-owned social impact agency, and it's been a delight to partner with the Ad Council with support from Pivotal Ventures for tonight's program, our Sounded Out National Town Hall Conversation. Please let us know, as you already are doing, where you have logged in from. We love to see it. I see someone from Bridgewater, Massachusetts, Charmaine from Sacramento, California. I see Alicia from Detroit, Michigan. We are just so excited to have you all with us for this conversation. So let's talk a little bit more about Sound It Out. It's a national campaign that uses the power and soul of music to help parents and caregivers better support their middle schoolers' emotional wellness. We'll continue to repeat this throughout the evening, but for more information about the campaign, please visit sounditouttogether.org. And let's continue this conversation on social even during tonight's program by using the hashtag SoundItOutTogether. Now, I am truly, truly excited for this panel that I am about to be a part of. We have two of the advisors who were deeply involved in the development of the Sound It Out campaign and its resources for parents and caregivers. These resources help make talking about emotional well-being with kids easier and more intentional. Everyone type in intentional. And they are provided for free on sounditouttogether.org and also provided in Spanish. So we have first Dr. Alfiee Breland-Noble, known professionally as Dr. Alfiee. How are you this evening?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful. Dr. Alfiee is a pioneering psychologist, scientist, author, media contributor. She's the founder of the Acoma Project. She's an in-demand expert in BIPOC mental health. She hosts a video podcast, Couched in Color, with Dr. Alfiee, and she's a regular broadcast, digital, and print media contributor for many, many outlets. And we have Dr. Regina Miranda. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here this evening.
Yes, and she's a professor of psychology at Hunter College, where she directs the laboratory for the study of youth cognition and suicide. And she's the director of clinical training of the doctoral program in health psychology and clinical science at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. And her research focuses on understanding why young people think about and attempt suicide in a way that can inform assessment, treatment, and prevention of suicide risk. She co-founded and directs the Youth Suicide Research Consortium, which seeks to increase diversity in youth suicide research. And she's the co-editor of the Handbook of Youth Suicide Prevention, Integrating Research into Practice. Well, thank you both for taking the time out of your busy schedules to talk with us this evening. Let's dive right in, shall we?
Yes.
Well, the first question is why is emotional well-being important to a child's development? Who would like to start?
I'll let Dr. Miranda go. She's brilliant, so I'm gonna yield to her.
Feeling emotions is as natural as breathing, right? And often we focus on our physical health, but we don't realize or recognize that our emotional well-being is tied to not only our physical health, but all aspects of our life. So from school to relationships to work, and learning to navigate, to recognize and navigate and talk about our emotions is an important part of development as a human being. And we've also seen that with the pandemic, that even before the pandemic, we were seeing increases in mental health problems among our young people. And COVID-19 has given us, because it's a collective stressor that we're all experiencing, it's given us an opportunity to turn our attention to mental health. So these were things that were happening. We were already seeing increases in way before the pandemic, including among youth of color, and that weren't being adequately addressed. And so now this has given us an opportunity to turn our attention to emotional well-being, especially among communities that don't typically have access to mental health resources.
The only thing I would add to that, to what my esteemed colleague is sharing, is that I'm just going to pick up on the thread that she mentioned about our young people of color. So one of the many reasons I value her and her work is because our work overlaps in the sense that we're really focused on the needs of young people, where traditionally in our field, these young people's needs were not focused on, right? So I can remember early in my career when people said, well, how is Black kids and kids of color mental health any different than anybody else's? Well, for one, our young people are dealing with some different stressors, right? So if they're kids of color, they're dealing with racial trauma, many of them, right? We know that under COVID, there have been disproportionate impacts, physical health, financial challenges on frontline workers and people who are out there, like really on the front lines. And a disproportionate number of those folks are people of color who have children, who have nieces and nephews, who have younger siblings. And so what's also really important is when we look at these significant upticks, as it was mentioned by Ms. Taylor and was mentioned by Dr. Miranda, in certain communities, we know that suicide is disproportionately negatively impacting, in particular, young Black people. And so we have a duty as mental health professionals, as advocates, as social impact leaders, to really shine a light on these things and really say to people, we see you, we value you, we want to support you in culturally relevant ways, which is also why the Sound It Out campaign is so important. Like when we were starting, I was jamming to that music, Toby and the Wigway, like it was fabulous. And so that's important for allowing our young people to know that we see them specifically and that they're not an aside, that they're front and center.
Yeah, absolutely. It just brings back two things that I failed to mention in the beginning of my background. One, I taught middle school history, an all boys school, Black and Latino boys, taught history for 6 years. So understand this really well. And second, I have a godson, a 10-year-old godson who struggled through the pandemic, and we had to find resources to help this young man. And so it's so important. And the Sound It Out campaign, it uses the power of music to help parents and caregivers have these conversations early and often with their children about their emotional well-being. I'd love for you to both dive just a little deeper into what it is about music that can help open up these conversations.
Well, I can start. I have teenagers in my home, and one of the ways in which we connect is through music. So I'm Gen X, so I'm old school hip hop head, and my kids are new school. Now I do like a lot of new stuff, right? I like Drake. I love Travis Scott. There are a lot of young. I like Megan. Right, some of it, not all of it. I love Cardi. And so there are a lot of ways in which when they're sharing music with me, right, like NBA, Youngboy, and all these folks, I'm like, who is that? They are educating me about what's important to them. And that gives me insight, right? So it's not just about the music. It's about how the music becomes an entry point into me understanding what's going on in their worlds. So we're in the Northern Virginia area. And unfortunately, today we had a scare at one of the high schools. And I feel like because I'm able to communicate with my own children and the young people I work with through the nonprofit, the Acoma Project, around things like music, and I try to understand their music and I try to engage with them around their music, even if I don't like all of it, there's so much of it that I really do like, that when the time comes and these tragic things and difficult things happen in real time, I think a lot of the young people in my life feel like they can come to me because we have a point of synergy in other ways. And I think, in addition, music, in addition to giving us insight, music becomes something that we can focus on jointly with our children, with the young people in our lives, so that we're not with having these awkward silences and awkward pauses, trying to figure out what are the words that I need to say to my child or this young person in my life to open up. And so when the idea was presented to me very early on in the project, I was elated because I just felt like it was a really timely, a really important, and I have to say representation matters. And so who the artists are who produce the music is so important, right? And the fact that my colleague, Dr. Miranda, is bilingual and that is reflected in the whole campaign, I just feel like that's so important for our young people to know, as I said earlier, that they're seen, they're heard, and they're valued. So that's what I would say about music and its relationship to this whole campaign, our young people and mental health.
Absolutely. And I'll just add that music, even if you don't know the words that are being sung, you can get the sense of what the artist is trying to convey through the music. So it's a universal form of communication. But also many of us have had those moments when we listen, we are feeling something, we listen to a song, and we may not know how to articulate what we're feeling, but then somebody's articulating it in the song and in the lyric, and like, oh, that's how I'm feeling. And so I think that's the idea behind the Sound It Out campaign, that helping kids to develop a vocabulary around emotional well-being and mental health through the power of music.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. It's a remarkable concept. It's something that we take for granted. We all have used music in various ways to get us through various points of our lives, and really taking this to a level where we can enable and help and empower parents and caregivers to have these conversations through this tool is really important. And so, if I'm on and I'm a parent or a caregiver, I may think that I'm checking in pretty often and that I understand my kids' emotional well-being. But we all know that sometimes it's hard to get kids, and especially kids at the middle school age, to open up beyond just saying I'm fine, or closing the bedroom door, or texting with their friends. What can parents and caregivers do to make it easier for their kids to share, and how can they practice and prepare for these conversations?
Dr. Miranda?
Well, the first thing I would say is that we should serve as models ourselves. So if we're closing ourselves off from talking about our feelings and not willing to talk about what we are experiencing, then we can't expect and ask our kids to do it. So I think the first thing is to serve as examples that show that sometimes we have good days, sometimes we have bad days, sometimes we feel great, sometimes we don't feel great. And it's okay to feel that full range of feeling. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it's going to vary by kid, right? So at first it might be awkward. There's no perfect entry point to the conversation. I think what's nice about the Sound It Out campaign and the website is that it has resources and suggested guides for how to start these conversations, starting about small things, not delving into like the big question about the feelings right away, but really finding points of common interest, common ground, and starting with, it can be something simple like, for me, I talk to my daughter when we're walking to the subway. I walk with her. I take her to her train stop, and we walk and when we're walking there, and then I pick her up, we check in, and I check in to see how she's doing. Or if she's listening, when I run, she puts music that she likes onto my my account, my Spotify, and so then I'll hear the music and she'll ask me, okay, what song was that? And so then we try to connect that way. So connecting through things that like music or shows that they like to watch, starting small and then keeping the conversation going. And so that when the conversation, look for your opening, when the conversation can open up, asking, okay, well, what is it that you like about that song? How do you think that the artist was feeling? Have you ever felt that way? Or if there's a character on television. So those are some small ways to start conversations to then keep it going. The important thing is to keep it going, and so that you can find your entry point to the bigger thing.
And I think what I would add to that is, in addition to keeping it going, it's everything Dr. Miranda said and finding the place to start, right? And so it's what is the entry point, and then how do I keep my momentum going once I find that entry point? And it is being patient with ourselves as parents and caregivers, right? We like one of the things that I think is culturally relevant about this whole conversation of parents and caregivers is because not everybody who's doing parenting work is a biological parent, right? You got grandparents, you got aunties, you got uncles, you got ates, you got all kinds of folks who are doing the parenting job. And our kids are encountering all kinds of folks who are serving as in that parental role. So to me, that's culturally relevant. I think as well, when we think about how do we engage in the conversations, all these great tips that we just heard from my colleague, I think it is, what are the conversation starters, right? Which she referred to in the guide. And so I want everybody to walk away tonight with two. And my two that are my go-tos are, don't ask your kid, how was your day? Matter of fact, don't ask anybody, how was your day? Because you know what you're going to get. Fine. Whatever. It was all right. Right. And I had to laugh when Nicholas was mentioning closing the door. I said, I don't know who house he been in, but you know, in some of these Black and brown households, parents don't play that. You ain't closing no door in my house. And so it's the idea of how do we, even for grown folks, let's be honest, right? And so some of it is, what are the specific kinds of conversation starters? So instead of how was your day, tell me something good that happened about in your day to day, right? It's hard to say fine to that, because it's like, what? Fine is not the answer to that question. And sometimes it's, tell me something not so great that happened. I'm famous for that with my kids. I know my kids get sick of me, but I'm always going to ask, and getting them used to you asking, right? So with Dr. Miranda and her daughter, they have a connection such that her daughter's putting stuff on Spotify. My son and I do the same thing. I have a 15-year-old. So every time something new comes out, I can't even name all the people he likes. There's all these underground people I've never heard of. He's texting me, Mom, have you heard this? And I'm like, okay, I don't know about all that, but I'm going to listen. And so we have that bond. And then the one other suggestion I would offer is temperature checks. I learned this a long time ago when I was a graduate student in Wisconsin. And the temperature check is, pick a type of weather and ask your child to tell you, what type of weather are you feeling today? Sunny, cloudy, partly sunny, blizzard, snowstorm, whatever. And then that can lead you into more of a conversation about what they're feeling. So I'll stop there.
Oh, I love that. Temperature checks. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that with some adults. And also asking the right question, or rephrasing the way that we ask our questions about how our day has gone or is going. I love those two checks. Thank you both for that. And I want to shout out Miss Wilson from Mobile, Alabama in the chat. She mentioned she was a member of the National Sorority Phi Delta Kappa, and I was a kudo in that program, Delta Pi chapter. So I just want to shout her out and all of the work that that organization is doing. And I see a bunch of our national fraternities and sororities who have joined the conversation. Yes, I see you. I see you, Dr. Alfiee. And we're really happy that you've joined us. So the next question is about how the pandemic has affected us. I can't imagine how it has affected children. We've seen that the social isolation of COVID-19 has taken a toll on everyone's mental health, and particularly young people. We all rely on friendships to maintain a sense of community, and sometimes they help us manage anxiety and or depression. What advice or tools do you recommend to families who are sort of navigating these challenges?
That's a great question. What I share with families often is more general. I think there are general things and then there are specific things. One of them, I think, is curating your news. I say this all the time. Because with the 24-hour news cycle, it's not to disparage news. I have friends who are journalists, so I don't want them to be out of work. I think what's important, though, is to recognize that with the 24-hour news cycle, there's a lot of what we affectionately refer to as trauma porn. There was a young woman who I think her name is Dr. Amanda Joy, who wrote another article today on how many times we have to see people of color hurt, right, or killed to get the message that there's a crisis as it relates to these communities. And many people have talked about that. So this idea of trauma porn, I think it really resonates with me. And I think we can get stuck in this idea that we're the most active activists when we're sharing that stuff all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I think what I want to encourage people is that you can look and be engaged, without traumatizing other folks in your space by always sharing. And so that's why I say curate your news. So it's important to be careful. I saw this great thing, I think it was on the Root the other day website, where you get all the headlines. I think it was like in 2 minutes on there. That to me is a great way to be informed, but without being overwhelmed. So curating your news is one. I think two is turning off the television, turning off the device, and having some controls over, for your middle schoolers, how, I know middle schoolers would choke me if they could hear me saying this right now, how much time we give them with unfettered access to their devices. I think when we're engaged, we can help them be better consumers of what they're seeing. Because remember, like I said, we had an incident today, and the only reason I knew about the incident at one of the high schools in our area is because my kids told me, like almost in real time, because one of their friends was texting them while it was happening. And so we don't want our kids to be overloaded. They're already sharing information with each other constantly. And so I think what we can do as parents is to help them navigate and manage the information uptake a lot better. But to echo Dr. Miranda, we have to do that for ourselves as parents, and curating your news and limiting, I think, is one effective way of doing that.
Agree. The other thing I'll just add is that while the pandemic has created a lot of stressors, it's a stressful time for many of us. It also created an opportunity, right? Because we're talking about mental health and our feelings more now and it's now okay. So it's normalized. And so whereas before people may have been struggling and there was no outlet for discussion, now we have an opportunity to open up the conversation. So again, just serving as the example ourselves, like we're going through a tough time. We're wired for human connection, and it's hard to be disconnected from people. And so first of all, acknowledging that we're feeling that too, and it's okay to feel that way. And then being present with our kids and giving them that opportunity, that opening to really express and talk about what they might be feeling. And that it's natural to be feeling this because we're all feeling this.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's natural to be feeling this. And I also love the concept of curating the news. I am one who mutes certain people on my timeline if it's just too much of the trauma that's being posted. Mute them for a time period. Love that concept, and glad that you brought that up. But again, to Dr. Miranda's point, it is natural for us to be feeling this way, especially after we are in year 2 point whatever of this pandemic. So I have one more question before we go to some audience Q&A. I see a bunch of questions in the chat. If we don't get to your question, know that we are going to download this chat and hopefully have an opportunity to provide an answer to you directly if we don't get to it. But thank you for the chat's popping. Thank you for all of your comments in the chat around this important issue. So my final question before we go to audience Q&A is what are some behaviors that parents and caregivers should look out for to know when their children are struggling with their mental health? I think that's the key question. What are some pieces that you can give parents and caregivers on the line as lookouts and call-outs, watch-outs?
So if you see changes in sleep and appetite, irritability, mood swings, extreme sadness and persistent sadness, feeling hopeless about the future, saying that there's nothing to look forward to. Some kids may get to the point where they feel like they're burdens on their families and on other people, and that they don't belong. So if they express that they feel like they're a burden, or that even expressing that it would be better off if they were dead. If they talk about suicide, if they engage in self-harm or suicidal behavior, or also having extreme anxiety and avoiding situations, like all of a sudden they used to like going to school, but now they don't want to go to school. Also not being interested in doing the things that they usually liked doing. So if they usually liked going to hang out with friends and now they just want to stay in their room and they're not interested. So really changes in what was typical for them.
I would just pick up on one part of this that I think is particularly relevant for Black and Latinx youth, and that's the irritability piece. Because often what happens with our children is in settings. I'm a public school child. I'm a child of two parents who are public school teachers. So I say this with affection. I also say this from experience. Often for Black and Latinx youth in particular, when they demonstrate irritability in the classroom, in the school setting, it is not regarded as irritability. It's not regarded often as a symptom of an internalizing, what we call an internalizing disorder, which might be depression and sometimes anxiety. Instead, it's often regarded as aggression, and it is regarded as disruptive behavior problems. I've been on this soapbox for 20 years, I feel like. And so I think what's important is to understand what's underneath the assertion and the aggression, because sometimes that what we conceptualize as aggression is really a young person's way of saying, get away from me, right? Because when you have depression, echoing Dr. Miranda's point, you don't really want to be engaged with people, right? You want to kind of turn in on yourself. And so how do you do that? You get people away from you. How do you get them away from you? Be difficult. And so sometimes I hope that what people will do is look at a little deeper than what they're seeing on the surface, pay attention, ask questions, observe if that behavior is demonstrated with everybody. I've had many occasions where the kids will be angry and assertive with their parents or their caregivers, but they're not doing that with other people in their lives, right? And so what might that mean? And I think the one other thing I would just echo and add is that we're looking for, I just want to echo what Dr. Miranda said, which is when you're looking at your children, when you're observing, you're paying attention to changes in behavior that persist over time, right? So your child might be just kind of flat all the time anyway. But if you see a significant change and it's worse than flat, like they just like almost are just not engaging at all, then that's the time to pay attention. I learned a lot of this from my dear colleague who's on here. Her name is Kathy Williams. And, she talks about how we as parents and caregivers look at things as being typical teenage behavior. And I think what we also want to do is think about what's typical teenage behavior for our children. And when the children in our lives, and when we see our child deviate from what we think of as typical for them, echoing everything that my colleague just said, that's when we want to engage and take action.
And if I could just add to what Dr. Alfiee said, that some kids don't show their feelings through like words. They don't express it through words. They'll express it through physical symptoms. So sometimes when a kid is anxious, instead of saying that they're nervous, they'll have a stomach ache or they'll have a headache. And so again, looking at not just behavior, but also what they're reporting. Are they all of a sudden not wanting to go to school because their stomach hurts?
Right. I hope that everyone on the line has enjoyed this impactful conversation as much as I have. We're not done yet. We have a lot more in this program. We're going to go to some audience Q&A, and then we have another panel that you do not want to miss, so make sure you stay on. I want to go to, is it Clarissa, who has our first question from our audience. Clarissa?
Good evening. I wanted to know if you could share information with the parents when the child is transitioning to middle school. So I currently have a 5th grader who is going to transition into middle school. So what kind of conversations could we have starting now that he will be more prepared for the middle school transition?
That's an awesome question. So I'll tell you, you're already ahead of the game because you're thinking about it. I think, including myself, a lot of us don't think about this as a significant transition for our young people. And so we just, it's just another school year. Maybe it's a new school, but I don't think we think about the emotional impacts on our young people. So I'll tell you what I did personally with my kids. We would role play. What happens if on the first day you go to lunch and nobody wants to sit beside you? What are you going to do? Where can you go? Who can you go talk to? And we did that also from middle to high school as well. And so asking, in addition to that, in the role playing, asking them, do they have any worries? Tell me, and not, are you worried, but you can get yes or no. Again, tell me something you're concerned about going into middle school, right? So for full disclosure, I'll share that my children, we moved them from the school that they were slated for into what we thought would be a much more diverse school for that transition from elementary to middle. And I have to tell you, one of them was not happy. On the back end, right, they're both in high school now. It's like, oh, I see why you did it. You know, we get wisdom. The older they get, the smarter we get. And so, you know, having that conversation afterward, just to say, I know it was important to you to stay with your friends, but what was more important to us is that we move you from a school that was literally 2% kids of color to a school that was like 41% Latinx, 10% African-American and Black, so that you could have a different experience. But having that conversation early on, and asking them what they were worried about, to describe it for you, so that you can then find your points of intervention. They're good at giving you data, and you can then take that data and work with your child in a way that would be useful for them.
And that's excellent suggestions. I would also add to that, in addition to asking what might concern them, ask them what they're looking forward to. Because we sometimes assume that this is going to be a difficult transition. Some kids love it. They love the change. They make new friends. And so ask about what they're looking forward to, what they think it might be like. And also share what it was like for you. What were the positives and what were the challenges for you?
I mean, excellent. Dr. Alfiee and Dr. Miranda, as you were saying that, I was like, oh my goodness, I should have called you both 10 months ago when I was tackling the cafeteria and the school bus with my godson. And so I love the idea of role play. Okay, our second question from the audience is from Tapiwa. So if we could bring her up, and she has a question for you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My question is, how can I help my daughter, who is 15 years old, feel calm and safe? She's constantly nervous and anxious about every decision she makes.
I love this. Okay, so I'm gonna dive in because I'm anxious. And I definitely know what that feels like. And so that worrying, what I tell people is, when you're anxious, when you experience any kind of anxiety on a regular basis, when you wake up in the morning, right? My visual I've always used with young people is, your brain is already doing this. As soon as you open your eyes, right? Because you're worried about everything. What happened last night, what you should have said to your friend, what so-and-so said on Instagram or Snapchat to you that you didn't respond to, who's talking about you. Like, they have 50 million things that are going on. Did I finish my homework? Is mama gonna get on me today about something? So you wake up with this. And I think the goal is recognizing that if you wake up here, as the day goes, you're gonna keep going up, because it's just gonna be more stimuli coming at you. So the goal is to bring yourself back down to what I call a baseline. And Kathy, if she's still watching, is gonna laugh, because I'm always talking about know your baseline. So the two things I would say is, it can be helpful to work with your child on, let's figure out what your baseline is. I want you, for a week to track, maybe every other day. It doesn't have to be every day, because then it starts feeling like homework. And then if you're anxious, you're like trying to be perfectionist. She said track it. And so then that's another thing that you're worried about. But every couple of days, let's check in for a week. You tell me how you're feeling. First thing in the morning, we used to call it a mood tracker. In the middle of the day and in the evening. That's going to give you a way to calibrate when are the worries the worst, right? So that's one thing. You want to track it. That becomes data. The second thing I say is, I'm big on mindfulness. Mindfulness is free. Mindfulness is portable. Mindfulness is not tied to any kind of religious, right? It's just, mindfulness is the practice of being present. So can you help your child learn things like just some of the principles of mindfulness? What I tell young people as well is, anxiety is worrying about stuff that you can't control in the future, or worrying about stuff that happened that you can't fix, you can't change it. So let's be present. And then walking them through how to be present. So I love apps like the Smile app, the Liberate app. These have a lot of people of color voicing and the pictures and the graphics. And I do that with my kids. And I used to use Stop, Breathe, and Think, because they have a kids version. So my son is 15, like your child is 15. So I've been preaching about mindfulness literally since they were born. Another thing, I'm gonna echo Dr. Miranda one more time. They've seen me practice mindfulness and meditation for 18 years. So since they were little bitty, they know that that's a big part of my life. And so they know when they come to me, I'm worried. They are, okay, mom, I gotta go meditate. Because they know that's the first thing I'm gonna say. Did you practice some mindfulness? Did you meditate? So those are some of the things I would say to practice with your child.
And I would just add that, so some of us, and something that Dr. Alfiee said earlier, some of us are wired to be more anxious, right? And that's just that's our baseline. And some of us are anxious because of things that happen to us in our lives that have made us anxious. And so that's okay to be that way, right? Sometimes as parents, we want to kind of fix and take away all of the challenges their kids are going through, the things that they struggle with. And it's about managing, right? Given how we're wired, managing and helping us thrive in the midst of that. And so not looking at it as a, like this is something that's bad about you, but this is okay. This is how you are, and let's learn to navigate. And also there are times when anxiety, I have colleagues who talk about anxiety as being helpful in some ways. So it makes us pay attention to things. It helps us plan for the future. And so thinking about tuning into those positive aspects of anxiety too. As my colleague Tracy Dennis, who has a book coming out on anxiety and being a superpower. So, some of us are wired, there's diversity in how we're wired emotionally. And I think that that can help to kind of normalize those experiences, but then at the same time, using strategies that Dr. Alfiee suggested to manage and to cope.
I love that. Normalizing it. That's my takeaway. That was healing for me to hear it because it runs in my family. So to know some of us are wired that way, so you don't feel like there's something wrong with you. I just want to echo that. That's phenomenal. I love that.
You took my sentence, Dr. Alfiee. I was going to say normalizing it. That's powerful. And all of these takeaways have been so incredibly important and powerful. And I hope the audience has received as much as I have from these two powerhouses who are really helping us navigate all of this. So Dr. Alfiee and Dr. Miranda, we are so appreciative of you taking the time to be with us tonight. And we are not done. We have so much more, including announcing our Sound It Out Challenge winners. And so thank you again for joining us for tonight's conversation. And again, for more additional tools and resources, please visit sounditouttogether.org or escuchandosentimientos.org in Spanish. We will continue the conversation on social using the hashtag #SoundItOutTogether. Now I'm going to pass it on to my wonderful friend and colleague, Joelle Leon, who's going to introduce our next conversation. You don't want to miss it. Thank you all.
Hey, y'all can see me, right? Awesome. Nicholas, thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Alfiee, Dr. Miranda. That was so beautiful. Such a welcoming and endearing, heartfelt conversation, and a conversation that I think we continue to need to have. So please make sure you follow Nicholas's suggestions, follow this conversation on social, make sure you're staying on top of this conversation. And shout out to all of y'all for being here on a Thursday night. I'm gonna turn my fan down because it's a little loud over here. But I'm super duper excited to really start this conversation that we're gonna jump into tonight. I am a girl dad. For those who don't know, I am a father to two girls, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm also a performing artist. I'm a mental health advocate. And I think when we start talking about music and the arts, it starts with the young people. I think, and Dr. Alfiee kind of touched on this, and Dr. Miranda as well. Music has the power to transform, to change lives, to save lives. I know music and art, especially the performing arts, saved my life. And so I think it's an opportunity to really highlight these 3 phenomenal individuals who are sharing and sharing space and time with us tonight. Anna, Marianne, and Howie, thank you so much for being here, and for being brave enough, being courageous enough to share your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions. So I feel like we can go ahead and get started. If everyone's cool, I'm just hey, look at faces. This is. See, I wish I was cool as y'all when I was this age. Oh, awesome, y'all. Thank y'all for being here tonight. I appreciate your time, your energy, your hearts, all that good stuff. So maybe we'll just jump into the first question. And I think this kind of got touched on earlier. The pandemic has changed a lot for all of us, right? I think whether you're a parent, a caregiver, a guardian, a student, the child of one of those individuals. It's kind of shaped and shifted how we operate as a community. In school, I think it's become a very big part of this conversation when we talk about the pandemic. I'm sure it probably was a huge transition for each one of you. But how have you been handling that? And I think a bigger question on top of like how you've been handling it, what are some of the healthier habits you think you've been able to establish or create in order to deal with the pandemic in this space and time? And feel free to jump in, whoever wants to start first. Or I can just pick somebody.
Well, I think that a lot of healthy habits can come from just thinking about like your day in general, and then it can also come to physical health and just maybe time with your family or just different ways of expressing yourself. So you could be either singing or baking with your mother, or just reading and trying to relate to different things so you can understand yourself. And I think it's a really beautiful thing, even though it was a hard time, that we still found ways to have a healthy way to get.
I love that, Anna. Anybody else want to chime in? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, lately I've been into like getting my mind straight, my physical straight, and my body straight. I'm currently sore from going to the gym. Fitness has been my main go-to to kind of deal with things on my mind and stuff, putting in that work. Always have something. One of the things that I've experienced, always have yourself busy, always have yourself doing something. Because if you just sit around, then you're going to be inconsistent. I learned that the hard way with life and everything. So always keep motivated, always keep moving, always keep motivation. Because once you lose that motivation, everybody gets off track every once in a while. It's okay. That's what humans do. That's what people do. But it's important at the end of the day to get back on track and not to procrastinate and make excuses, because there's a difference between an excuse and a reason. And an excuse is made, like I'm telling you, like an excuse is basically a reason is before the fact, and excuse is after the fact. So it's all about, keeping your mind good, your mind, your body, and all that stuff good, straight, and healthy. And that's really what matters. And in order for you to take care of the people around you, you have to take care of yourself first, and then take care of those around you. Because if you can't treat yourself well, you can't treat the other people around you well. So it's very, 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 very important to stay consistent and stay healthy and stay on top of everything and stay in your grind and be positive all the time, 24/7.
Thank you for that, Holly. Marianne, jump on in.
Going fully remote was very difficult for me because it was just you and your computer filled with classmates that cannot share more than just the class. And when I went back to school, I became anxious and a little afraid to make friends because I had gotten so used to social distancing. So some habits that I did was to leave all my insecurities on the dance floor because I'm a dancer, and with baby steps and little by little trying to get back to the old routine before the pandemic happened.
Thank you for that, Marianne, and thank you all. I love that, because what I'm hearing from all three of y'all too is like a lot of that work starts at home and here, right? Like finding community, whether it be your parent, right? Whether it be like the movement, right? How you're talking about instrumentation and like working out. Marianne, you're talking about physical movement, right? Like utilizing our bodily space in order to do that. And then like, and even like what you're doing at home. I think we're all talking about different ways in which, again, we can kind of utilize community in order to get through this, which I love hearing that from y'all. We'll go on to the second question. And I'll say this, like I know like my relationship with my mom, I love my mom to death. There's certain things I just can't talk to my mom about. She's West Indian, she's kind of old, so like she heard me say this right now, she'd be really mad. But like there's not much I can come to her with where she'll have like an understanding, because I'm 39, I grew up in a certain era. There's like certain cognitive dissonance, if you will. Have you ever felt this way? Like, have you ever wished that you could tell whomever that is taking care of you, again, whether it's a parent, a guardian, whomever, tell them what you're feeling, but didn't have the language for it? And if so, like, how did that make you feel? And you know what, Marianne, we'll start with you. if that's okay.
I didn't always have to share my feelings with my parents, but there are some things that I wish I could openly talk about with them, just like any other teenager. And I know that communication is very important, especially at our age. But it is frustrating that not all of us can communicate 100% with our parents because, at least for me, I think that I would get scolded or afraid of, what they might say. And I have my sisters who listen, so that relieves me, but it is frustrating that not all of us can get to communicate with our adults better.
Cool. Howie, why don't you take a stab at it? What are your thoughts?
Oh, like I feel like it's a generational gap between like the parents and the kids. So some things that I like when a lot of the time I used to keep like 99% of the stuff that I was going through to myself. I didn't really open up about stuff because I'm an only child. Growing up, I didn't really see the reason why I should tell anybody anything. And I honestly saw like speaking to people and stuff like as a bad thing. And because I only knew what my perception of it was, and that was just to keep it bottled inside. And society appropriated that, and it was kind of hard growing up because it was like everything I went through, I didn't say nothing. I just went through it, and I noticed myself like basically. And then when I got to a point, like a confident point where I felt like, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe let's give it a try. It was like, there's certain things with parents, like I feel in general, it's like you have to like filter or sort certain things out in a way. Like you don't want to come off the tone or disrespectful or certain things. So like your mind, what you have in your mind, you have to kind of readjust it into the way when you're expressing it to a person, because in your mind it's different from when you say it, and different from the person and the way their mind works and the way they can interpret what you're saying. So that's another thing. I had to take time and really like think about what I was saying, what I had in my head, and what I wanted to say, and how I want to make that known and make the issue or problem known and make a resolution of that. So converting that was really the hard point for me, but I eventually got it done, and it was a great thing. And it's a great thing that I try and I do to this day, but that was definitely the hardest thing.
Thank you for that, Howie. Anna, what about you?
Well, I feel very blessed to come from a family where I can talk about my feelings without feeling any type of judgment. But even then, sometimes you feel like you just can't speak about it, or you feel like you can't speak about it because you just in general don't know what you're feeling. So sometimes you want to say something, but you don't know how to say it, or you don't know how to explain it, or what it even is, or why you're feeling it, which is usually, I think, one of the bigger hard parts, not the part about expressing, but not even knowing what you're feeling. And I think that that's probably one of my bigger struggles, is trying to understand what I'm feeling so I can try to express it to others and not feel like I'm confusing them and confusing myself even more.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Thank you all for sharing that. I mean, this is kind of a quick question pivot, but I'll pose this to all three of you. What do you think parents or caregivers could do to make that easier for you to feel like you have the space and room and capacity to express yourself? I think even Anna, to your point, even if you don't have the language, what does that look like, do you think? If you can give that to me like briefly, like what do you think we as caregivers, as parents, as teachers, whomever who's showing up in this space, what can we do more of to make sure that you feel more comfortable in sharing in that way? Yeah, and anyone can take this and start.
So I think that maybe, something like really brief could simply just be like for parents to like remind us that they are going to understand what we're going through because they also went through it too. So I think that just maybe a simple reminder could really be helpful.
How about you, Howie? Real quick.
I feel like motivational check-ins are the greatest thing to do. I hear a lot of these, and sometimes when I'm inconsistent, I'm off track, it really puts me back on track because then I remember. So definitely reminders.
Nice. Marianne, what about you?
I agree with what Anna and Howie said about reminders, and I would like for my parents like understand what I'm about to say about what I'm about to express, you know, be comprehensive.
I love that. Um, so next question. I think sometimes I think middle schoolers in and of themselves can like, you can see yourselves as almost as like activists for different causes, who kind of like pushing the needle with regards to whatever the cause might be. In that same space and holding space for that conversation, how do you balance your own mental health while also supporting bigger causes like social justice or mental health for another community? Like, how do you find the balance between showing up for your own mental health while also showing up for the other causes that you care about? Anna, we'll start with you.
So I've always loved women empowerment. I think it's something absolutely beautiful to see how women help other women feel better about themselves, because it's we live in a very hard community, which is the world, right? So I think it's very important just to let others know that just the simple fact that others will be there for them. And then I know that if I'll be there for them, I'm going to have people to be there for me. So that'll help me feel more confident in myself and my mental awareness. And sometimes just take a breather and think about not letting things get to me, because a lot of the time people say things without thinking, or they just say them because they think it's funny or because they just don't know what else to say. So I think that just taking a breather and knowing your self-worth is something extremely important.
I love that. How about you, Howie? Like, how do you balance the mental health, your own mental health, while also um, advocating for these other causes and things that you care about?
Honestly, advocating for other causes is really what drives me. That's my motivation for my own self, because I feel like if you can help others, you can help yourself and vice versa. But I feel like if you see another person, I feel like you get a different view if you're helping another person out and you get to see their point of view and you get to see what they're going through. It's like, it helps you a lot, because depending on if they're going through something worse than you, because that may help you and be like, oh, if they're going through this, I can do it and I can help them. We could both get through this. So it's really like a hand in hand community thing, helping hand type of thing. And it's really a good way of thinking, and it really helps me, like I said, get back on track and realize that, hey, maybe what I'm going through isn't as bad as I may think, or something like that. So that's definitely how I feel about that.
That's really dope. What about you, Marianne? What do you think?
When I hear or see social injustice, I forget about my own problems for a while and start defending the person being discriminated for whatever reason. I know that I could care about myself at any moment, but if something's not right with someone else, I'll always try to help. And I feel like we should like help each other. And aside from that, when I get home, I would do like therapeutic activities like listening to music or exercising, meditating, you know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Last question for your brilliant minds and hearts. And I feel like I kind of know the answer to this, but I kind of just want to hear it in your own words. Is music and art an outlet for you? And is it a way for you to deal with the things happening in your life? And if so, in what ways? And Howie, we'll start with you to kick that off.
Yes. Music is has to be one of the most, like, I don't even know how to explain. Music has to be like one of the most things that I value, like, of all time. I listen to music all the time. I was just listening to music while you guys are talking, while listening. I listen to music while, basically, the thing that's different with music compared to TV and movies and all that is you can do music on the go. When I was little, I didn't think because I see like people buying CDs instead of movies. I'm like, why are you buying? You could watch a movie. It's just like music is just so much different. Like it's like you can enjoy your life and whatever is going on around you, and then have something in the background and to help you also think. And I feel like I listen to two types of music. I listen to all genres, but there's really like two types of music in every genre, which is the lyrical side, and then you have like the fun vibe side. So everybody needs a balance of both, you know. Earlier, I like my lyrical artists like J. Cole and Cammy. Shout out to him. That's my boy. But like I like a little bit of everything. Something. So if you're sad, you need something to move. If you're feeling spiritual or feeling wise, you need something that really keeps you going in that mindset. And basically, it's just basically whatever you're in the mood in, and music just really, really, really helps with that. And it just adds on a special vibe to your life, and could just make you just open up in many different ways you didn't think you could, which is amazing.
I love that. I love that, man. Thank you for sharing that. Marianne, what about you? Has music and art had an impact on your life? And if so, how has it helped you deal with the things happening in your life?
Music comes in between my mind, body, and spirit, making my emotional state better. I like to think of music as the language and art of emotions. I feel like people who can express themselves verbally can totally communicate them through music. Because when I listen to music, I forget about everything, and it's like I've gone to a different world. It like relaxes my spirit, calms my mind down, and my body starts to dance. And through dance, it's like led by the music. I don't know how to like, it's just so amazing. Like, you know, dance, I can like express my feelings through dance, like listening to the music. So it is such a great outlet. And I want to mention that when I was like in quarantine, music was such a great distraction from like all the deaths going on, like friends and family. And it was hard to forget, but music made it a lot better.
Thank you for sharing that, Marianne, and sorry for any of the losses that you encountered during the pandemic. And not having the language is okay. I think Anna, you kind of mentioned that earlier, right? Like sometimes we don't have the language or the feelings. What did Bob Marley say? When the music, when the music hits you, you don't feel no pain. Anna, please, to close this out, what has music and art been an outlet for you? And if it has been, how has it helped you kind of get through some of the more difficult things in your life, if it has?
Always. I mean, music has always been something so powerful, and it's just a melody and some words, but those words can mean so much. And when I do gymnastics, and one of my favorite events is floor, not just because I like doing the skills on floor, but because there's music involved. So I can just feel how when I do my skills, I just feel it going through me. Like Marianne said, that it's a beautiful thing because you just feel it going all through you. And it's just a way to express yourself that you really can't do in many other ways. And it's incredible, absolutely incredible how music can do that to you. I think it's a beautiful concept in general.
Y'all so cool, man. Y'all really are. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Howie. Thank you, Marianne. Please continue to live in the love and the energy, and even through the good and the bad, man. Just continue to inspiring each other, inspiring yourselves, inspiring me, because it takes a lot of courage to kind of show up on this stage and share your feelings and thoughts about something that I feel like is so intimate. So thank y'all for sharing this time with us tonight. Also to parents, caregivers, guardians, teachers, whomever, if you're looking to have these very important and impactful conversations with the children in your life, please do not hesitate to head to sounditouttogether.org. Again, that is sounditouttogether.org. They have guides, a lot of tools, a lot of resources for you to kind of help navigate this space, and recognizing that music and art is a tool. Poetry can save the world, dance, rapping, singing, gymnastics, whatever you're doing, continue to do it and continue to share space and hold space for others. I guess we can get on into the next segment. Thank you, y'all, so much. I'm Joel Leon. Peace, love.
Thank you, Joel, Anna, Marion, and Howie for this amazing conversation. We at Unidos US are happy to support these important efforts. Next, we are thrilled to announce the winners of the Sound It Out Challenge. We asked middle schoolers to write their best rap, song, or poem that relates to mental health, and we are happy to announce the winners of our challenge. Our judging committee viewed so many wonderful submissions, and we thank everyone who participated. We are excited to announce our 4 winners this evening. So first up, the winner in the rap category is Jeremiah Clark. Here is his submission. It'll Be All Right. Congrats.
If you're ever going through anything, mentally, physically, I was gonna tell somebody about it. Don't keep it to yourself. That'd be my for you. I told you be alright with me. We've been going through things we don't have to be. These thoughts going through my head as a tragedy. These are someone I can talk to. Yes, everybody else is past it. Sometimes I think my fans don't care, but don't do that stuff to yourself. I'm asking. Crying out to my friend, got no help. Lost in me is a friend I can live it out. Lord, all the signs I get. So messing with my mental pain, I might get. For myself, I'm trying to catch a case. I beg and shit my mama, but they pay off. Oh, we all different people. We all go through the same things. For years, I've been battling depression, trying to come up and be happy and do the things I love to do. And it's hard, but you just gotta find people who really understand and do what you love.
Next up, the winner in the song category is Fly Zaya. Here's her submission, Dear DC, Go Go.
I'm a witness, I can see what's going on, I hope you listen. Cause I'ma put it in my songs, I know the difference between what's right and what's wrong, this is business. We've been fighting for too long, man, where is this? I used to consider it my home, we left me stranded. Now I'm feeling all alone and abandoned from all the hate that you've shown single-handed. Now you got me in a zone and it's candid. You can hear it in my tone, I'm demanding that you turn every stone misunderstanding. Causing hate to be thrown up from a branding, and it hurts to the bone. Dear DC, dear DC, this is a letter from Z. Yeah, dear DC, I hope you listen to me. I'm disappointed in the way that you train the human being. We're supposed to be the leaders, what does that really mean? Supposed to be the freest of the free speech. What happened to the times when teachers would really teach? What happened to the times when you handle what's in my reach? What happened to the times it was go lie in the streets? What happened to the look that you promised to give each? Every one of us, but the contract feels breach. Dear DC, dear DC, this is a letter from Z. Yeah, dear DC, I hope you listen to me. I always try to represent, but the C don't represent me. I try to be the best, but you fail to see what's in me. I try to feel blessed, but the stress is kinda heavy. But through it all, I gotta stay humble and be ready. But my will is strong, I'm soon to be a revolutionary. Never will I fall, fighting for all, I'm legendary. I really thought the people came first, not secondary. All the animosity in the streets unnecessary. All for nothing, cause police was pushing and shoving. Lost my family in the mix, we started running. Pull my little sis to the side, they kept coming. Now it's time I had to decide to do something. I just screamed, seeing daddy down on his knees. Mommy Ryan, a circle, she crying, I'm yelling please. This is not rehearsal, just a moment I had to seize. My feelings are controversial, just a letter from Z. Dear DC, dear DC, dear DC. I hope you listen to me.
Next, the winner in the poetry category is Theophilus Agbefe. Here is his submission, The Locker.
Sadness swallows you whole. Your image of life has been tainted with your strife. All that pain and emotion, you just put it in a locket so it never shows. Even the doctors call it depression, but in your soul, you know it's way deeper. You need a friend, a keeper, someone you can trust, so your locker doesn't bust. You think about talking to a teacher, but what would they think about a kid who's on the brink? Put you into an institution, thinking that's the only solution. So no, cross that off the list, till you finally realize the people you can trust are the ones who care the most. So you open up your locker bit by bit. Open up and you start a new list. You find a way to cope. When you realize those feelings don't mean you're broke, they just make you human.
Outstanding. I don't know about you all, but I'm having an amazing time this evening. All right, last but not least, we asked participants to post their submission to Instagram for a chance to win the Viewer's Choice Award. And the winner is Gabrielle Watkins.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Watkins, and today I'm going to be reading my original poem, Imagine. Imagine a world where emotional well-being is at the top priority every day, where the community checks to see if the young generation is okay. We are at a time where stigmas and stereotypes drown out the people in need, where mental health is a garden and a little help is planting the seed. Imagine a world where stigmas and stereotypes are replaced with empathy and compassion, and most of all with the gift of God's grace. Imagine a world where we don't feel alone, where we don't have to take the journey by ourselves. After all, battles are not meant to be fought on our own. This poem is a call to action that isn't assigned to a single gender, race, age, or name. Let these words ignite something inside of you. Let them spark an everlasting flame. I want this poem to bring about change, to be a beacon the world can see, to help bridge the gap between parents and children, opening the doors of conversation because that is the key. Can you imagine this world? Building it would mean that we all have to commit. Can you imagine this world? Now it's up to all of us to go create it.
Outstanding. Thank you, Gabrielle, and thank you to all of our winners tonight. And just look, you all should know that you really poured into our spirits. Art is healing, community is healing, and I'm so proud to be a part of this process this evening. So thank you to everyone who participated in the challenge. I'm now going to turn the floor over for final remarks from our VP.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. I am Taylor Mason of Values Partnerships, and I am a consultant here leading this lovely project. So thank you all for coming tonight and joining us. We want to congratulate the winners of the Sound It Out Challenge. You all did an amazing job. And before we head out, I would like to thank our wonderful speakers, Dr. Alfiee and Dr. Regina Miranda, our lovely moderators, Nicholas Wiggins and Joelle Leon, our amazing youth panelists, Anna, Marianne, and Howie, and our judging committee. All of the middle schoolers who participated in the Sound It Out Challenge as well too. Last but not least, I would like to give a huge shout out to all of our 15 partners who helped us push these two initiatives, it being the Sound It Out Challenge in this national virtual event this evening, the ACOMA Project, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Fathers Forward, National Alliance on Mental Illness, also known as NAMI, Fathers Incorporated, National Cares Mentoring Movement, the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, District Motherhood, Progressive National Baptist Convention, the JED Foundation, Unidos US, the National Action Network, NAACP, Boys and Girls Club of America, and the National Black Justice Coalition. This is such an important topic, and it is our pleasure to partner with the Ad Council on this. Please remember, for more tools and resources to support emotional well-being for your children and your life, you can visit sounditouttogether.org. You can also go back and rewatch this event on the Sound It Out Facebook page immediately after this on facebook.com/Sound It Out Together. And it will also be available on the Ad Council YouTube channel next week. It has been an amazing evening with you all, and we appreciate you spending it with us. Have a wonderful rest of your night. Goodbye.
wasn't on it. And we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at? Where you at? On the way out. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at? Underlay, underlay. How to ride a bike with no training wheels. For the first time while shaving. It ain't misbehaving. I was navigating without a compass. Eyes waiting. Started to wonder. Metamorphosis, the loss of who you thought you were. Why so often do the heroes metamorphosis? Appearing it appears that Samuel gets off on this. I feel the water amidst the parenthood of chocolate. Oh, Papa, Pappy, Daddy, Father, Baba. Oh, higher powers elevate the Father's hope. Oh, tell me how am I to do this on my own? Oh, show me what it means to be a man. Put me to bed, see you in the morning. With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't honest. And we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at? Where you at? On the way out. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at? Underlay, curses. They come around every time like curses. They weigh me down, generational curses. But then I found something that could reverse this. Purpose. Most kings and most queens get a limit. And those dreams and those stars. But those things I don't bring in my image. I owe me, they go far. Under the demons chasing.